Welcome back to one last random snorkeling adventure. It's a gloomy Monday in December, and today we're going to be snorkeling a forest creek running through the Alabama foothills. You guys know the rules. I don't know what I'm going to see, especially in December. It's kind of chilly today. The water is about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so going to be a cold one. But I'm going to get suited up, we'll get underwater and see what we can find. Thankfully, I did remember to bring warm water today, so that'll help make putting on the wetsuit a less horrible process. Got my kelp slime. Sprayed doesn't work, so that's why I have to just pour it in. I don't know if you can see the steam, but it's gonna be toasty. All right, here we go. Doesn't really get any easier. You just gotta suck it up and do it. Let's ride. All right, give us a little feel. Yeah, when it kind of stings your fingers at the ends, you know it's pretty cold. All kitted up, got the gloves. Let's get snorkeling. The water was slightly hazy, but still plenty clear for snorkeling. A closer inspection of the bottom of the creek revealed a landscape dominated by freshwater snails. There seemed to be at least a few of them on almost every surface. These guys are the cleanup crew for the creek, as they graze on algae and bits of decaying plants. And of course, they also are an important food source for the fish, crayfish, and turtles that inhabit this waterway. Initially, I wasn't seeing a lot of signs of movement in the creek. The snails are alive, but of course, they don't move very fast. But then, a tiny speedy fish came into view. It took a little while for him to come to a rest, as he was busy darting to and fro along the creek bed, which is fitting because this little guy is a darter. Better yet, I believe this is a holiday darter. What better fish to find on a December snorkel? If you look closely, there are some splashes of red and green color on the side. These little flecks of pigment promise an explosion of color at the right time of the year. When male holiday darters are fully colored up to breed in the spring, their whole bodies become brilliant green and red. Although the underwater world at the creek was certainly a little sleepy on this gloomy December day, things were beginning to come to life. I took a glance behind me and realized a whole school of tricolored shiners were following close after me. They were slurping down bits of food that were suspended in the water column from some of the sediment I stirred up as I snorkeled along. All the bare trees overhead meant there were quite a few leaves on the bottom of the creek this time of year. Moved on a little ways upstream to an area where the water was flowing much faster. All of a sudden, a wildly colorful creature caught my eye. I have seen many a crayfish in my day. This one, well, it wins it all. This is a Chattooga River crayfish, and just look at the crazy blues and oranges on this fella. It was a decent-sized crustacean, about 5 inches long. That is, not counting the long antennae that they use to navigate their environment and detect smell. Crayfish often feed on dead things which they find by following an underwater scent back to the source. In fact, researchers have found that almost half of their brain power is dedicated to processing smells. It was pretty sweet to watch this colorful crustacean just straight up vibing in his natural habitat in the creek. Eventually, he pumped his tail and scooted off, finding temporary cover beneath a big oak leaf, and I moved on. This part of the creek was shallow, fast, and clear, allowing enough sunlight to penetrate the surface to sustain a decent bit of aquatic vegetation. It rippled in the current like a meadow on a windy day. One of the shiners showed back up, and I followed him as he cruised over the tiny underwater grassland. By this point, I was ready to explore a different section of the creek, so I headed back to my entry point, and along the way, I ran back into the school of shiners, still diligently hunting bits of food in the water column. We got a little more spot to explore, so gotta head out and go downstream a little ways and check it out. Oh, also, in case you're wondering, I can no longer feel my toes. So there's that. The downstream section was noticeably rockier, with large scattered boulders in addition to continuous stone lining the riverbed. Despite the dreary day, there were some beautiful views in this tiny creek, and I took a moment to appreciate some of the aquascapes surrounding me. Eventually, in a little sandy patch, I came across another holiday darter. This one was slightly more colored up than the one from earlier, although still not quite full-blown. Darters always seem to be full of personality. Unfortunately for me, this spunky bloke did not stick around and disappeared somewhere off in the creek. I snorkeled on, pushing off from the boulders as I worked my way against the current, my eyes peeled for any and all movement or colors. And then bam, another Chatua crayfish came into view. This one somehow seemed to be even more orange than the last one. These are colors I would expect to see at an SEC football game, but here they are on a humble crayfish. This guy was much more active than the first one, and I followed him around for a bit as he ambled about between the rocks of the creek bed. Eventually, he wandered off, but not before squaring up and showing off for the camera. I reached another fast-flowing part of the creek. I seemed to be having better luck in these sections, so my eyeballs were extra peeled. Sure enough, I spotted a new darter species. This is a green breast darter. Once again, they are named for their breeding colors, which this guy was not displaying at the time. However, you can notice the much narrower nose and the dark band on their neck, which is a pretty good giveaway. I also realized that these fish look pretty sweet from the top down too. At even a fraction of their power, it's still hard to find a bad angle with these little stunners. I then came to a deep hole at a bend in the creek. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the largest fish of the day disappear in a tiny cave in the rocks. I worked my way closer and cranked the exposure on my camera just so I could see inside the crack. It's hard to see, but inside was an 8-inch long tiger-striped fish with a crazy wacky nose. This is a mobile log perch. When water temps are low, these fish stay holed up beneath rocks. He finally showed at least part of his face, so I could get a glimpse of that crazy nose. They use it to flip small rocks when searching for food. The log perch was determined to remain hidden. As I pulled back, I realized there were little lime green spots scattered across the surface of many of the rocks. While snorkeling, I had no idea what I was looking at, but I later learned that these are freshwater sponges. The green color comes from algae that has a symbiotic relationship with a sponge. The sponge provides shelter for the algae, which in return produces food and oxygen for the sponge via photosynthesis. Seeing these organisms is a sign of good water quality, and this was my first encounter with a wild freshwater sponge, so kind of a big deal. Sometimes the bottom of a creek doesn't look like much to us humans, but you gotta see it from the perspective of the things that live there. First glance, this is just another bump in the river, but in reality, this is a canyon, and its walls are teeming with life. Once again, the darters are back. Now, I will say, since these fellows aren't in full breeding colors, it can be hard to distinguish them from other similar-looking species. In this case, I believe there's a mix of holiday darters and Coosa darters, but regardless, They were swim crawling all over this micro canyon. Also, take note, there are more freshwater sponges. Gotta love darters. They are spunky little fish. Although there's still plenty of life to be found, it seems that December is a relatively quiet time in this forest creek. But I wouldn't have known that without getting in and taking a look around. Although the internet may tell you that you have to endlessly go bigger or go home, I'm not sure that's the best way to go about things. I found that it's just as much about the little guys in tiny creeks as it is the big guys in vast oceans. Both matter, and both are worthy of wonder and protection. There's a lot competing for our attention these days, and that's especially true in December. Sometimes it's good things like friends, family, and the warmth they bring, but sometimes it all feels cold and lonely. Then, of course, there's spiraling consumerism, the impending doom of Santa's cosmic judgment, and also that little kid from Nazareth. It's easy to get lost in the whirlwind blur of Yuletide's storm. If you're a little fish or an aquatic ecosystem on the brink, you gotta overcome a lot to even be seen. Despite the fact that water surrounds all of our countries, flows through our cities, and is the very lifeblood of our planet, we seem to be growing increasingly disconnected from these aquatic worlds. Over the past year, we've snorkeled a lot, and we've seen a lot. And I think the point of all of this is that every now and then, it's worth sticking your head underwater and having a look around, so that maybe, snorkel by snorkel and fish by fish, one day our world and theirs won't seem so far apart. Some of you guys already know, but I've been making my own music for the videos since February. And normally I use this thing, but since we're at my parents' house for Christmas, I figured why not use the real thing for the final video. I want to stop and say thank you guys so much for all your support over the past year. When I started the channel over a year ago, I never imagined it'd grow to where it's at right now. And I'm so grateful for all the kind messages and support. And yeah, just a really cool community we've built that is excited about snorkeling and exploring aquatic ecosystems. So seriously, thank you guys so much, and thanks for tagging along on all these adventures over the last year. Yeah, as always, I'll see you next time. Big thanks to my dad for coming along on this trip and for helping me carry my gear up and down the creek all afternoon.